the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Practical Psychology for Today. Featuring the works of Idries Shah, voiced by David Alt. Welcome to the Idries Shah Foundation podcast. Wisdom for Sale. A man named Saiful Muluk spent half of his life in seeking truth. He read all the books on ancient wisdom which he could find. He travelled to every known and unknown country to hear what spiritual teachers had to say. He spent the days working and the nights in contemplation of the great mysteries. One day he heard of yet another teacher, the great poet Ansari, who lived in the city of Herat. Bending his steps thither, he arrived at the door of the sage. On it he saw written, contrary to his expectation, a strange announcement. Knowledge is sold here. This must be a mistake, or else a deliberate attempt to dissuade the idle curiosity seeker, he said to himself, for I have never before heard it said that knowledge can be bought or sold. So he went into the house. Sitting in the inner courtyard was Ansari himself, bent with age and writing a poem. "Have you come to buy knowledge?" he asked. Saiful Muluk nodded. Ansari told him to produce as much money as he had. Saiful Muluk took out all his money, amounting to 100 pieces of silver. "For this much," said Ansari, "you can have 3 pieces of advice." "Do you really mean that?" asked Saiful Muluk. "Why do you need money if you are a humble and dedicated man?" "We live in the world, surrounded by its material facts," said the sage, "and with the knowledge that I have, I gain great new responsibilities. Because I know certain things that others do not, I have to spend money, among other things, to be of service where a kind word or the exercise of barakah is not indicated." He took the silver and said, "Listen well. The first piece of advice is, a small cloud signals danger." "But is this knowledge?" asked Saiful Muluk. "It does not seem to tell me much about the nature of ultimate truth or about man's place in the world." "If you are going to interrupt me," said the sage, "you can take your money back and go away. What is the use of knowledge about man's place in the world if that man is dead?" Saiful Muluk was silenced, and he waited for the next piece of advice. "The second piece of advice is, if you can find a bird, a cat, and a dog in one place, get hold of them and look after them until the end." This is curious advice, thought Saiful Muluk, but perhaps it has an inner metaphysical meaning which will become manifest to me if I meditate upon it long enough. So he held his peace until the sage brought forth the last piece of advice. "When you have experienced certain things which seem irrelevant, keeping faith with the foregoing advice, then and only then will a door open for you. Enter that door." Saiful Muluk wanted to stay to study under this baffling sage, but Ansari sent him away, rather roughly. He continued his wanderings and went to Kashmir to study under a teacher there. When he was travelling through Central Asia again, he reached the marketplace of Bokhara during an auction sale. A man was leading away a cat, a bird, and a dog which he had just bought. "If I had not tarried so long in Kashmir," thought Saiful Muluk, "I would have been able to buy these animals, because they certainly are a part of my destiny." Then he started to worry, because although he had seen the bird, the cat, and the dog, he had not yet seen the small cloud. Everything seemed to be going wrong. The only thing that saved him was looking through one of his notebooks in which he had recorded, though not remembered, the advice of an ancient sage. Things happen in succession. Man imagines this succession to be of a certain kind. but it sometimes is another kind of succession. Then he realized that although the 3 animals had been bought at an auction, Ansari had not actually told him to buy them at an auction. He had not remembered the words of the advice, which had been, "If you can find a bird, a cat, and a dog in one place, get hold of them and look after them until the very end." So he started to trace the buyer of the animals to see whether they were still in one place. After many enquiries, he found out that the man was called Ashikikuda, and that he had only bought the animals to save them the pain of being cooped up in the auctioneer's rooms, where they had been for several weeks, awaiting a buyer. They were still in one place, and Ashikikuda was glad to sell them to Saif-ul-Muluk. He settled in Bokhara, because it was not practicable to continue journeying with the animals. Every day he went out to work in a wool-spinning factory, returning in the evening with food for the animals which he had bought from his day's earnings. Time passed. 3 years. One day, when he had become a master spinner and was living as a respected member of the community with his animals, he walked to the outskirts of the town and saw what seemed to be a tiny cloud, hovering almost on the horizon. It was such a strange-looking cloud that his memory was jogged, and the first piece of advice came into his consciousness very sharply. A small cloud signals danger. Saif-ul-Muluk returned immediately to his house, collected his animals, and started to flee westwards. He arrived in Isfahan almost penniless. Some days later, he learned that the cloud which he had seen was the dust of a conquering horde, which had captured Bokhara and slain all its inhabitants. And the words of Ansari came into his mind. What is the use of knowledge about man's place in the world if that man is dead? The people of Isfahan were not enamored of animals, wool spinners, nor strangers, and Saif-ul-Muluk was before long reduced to extreme poverty. He threw himself down on the ground and cried, "O succession of saints! O holy ones! Ye who have been changed! Come you to my aid, for I am reduced to a state in which my own efforts no longer yield sustenance, and my animals are suffering hunger and thirst." As he lay there, between sleeping and waking, his stomach gnawed by hunger, and having resigned himself to the guidance of his fate, he saw a vision of something as clearly as if it were there. It was a picture of a golden ring, set with a changing lighted stone which flashed fire, glowed like the phosphorescent sea, and in its depths gave off green lights. A voice, or so it seemed to be, said, "This is the golden crown of the ages, the Samir of truth, the very ring of King Solomon, the son of David, upon whose name be peace, whose secrets are to be preserved." Looking around him, he saw that the ring was rolling into a crevice in the ground. It seemed as though he was beside a stream, under a tree, near a curiously shaped boulder. In the morning, rested and more able to bear his hunger, Saif-ul-Muluk started to wander around the periphery of Isfahan. Then, as he had half expected for some reason, he saw the stream, the tree, and the rock. Under the rock there was a crevice. In the crevice, into which he interposed a stick, was the ring which he had already seen in the curious way related above. Washing the ring in the water, Saif-ul-Muluk exclaimed, "If this is truly the ring of the great Solomon, upon whom be the salute, grant me, spirit of the ring, a worthy end to my difficulties." Suddenly it was as if the earth shook, and as if a voice like a whirlwind was echoing in his ears. "Across the centuries, good Saif-ul-Muluk, we bid you peace. You are the inheritor of the power of Solomon the son of David, upon whom be peace, master of the jinns and men. I am the slave of the ring. Command me, Master Saif-ul-Muluk, master." "Bring the animals here, and food for them," said Saif-ul-Muluk at once, not forgetting to add, "In the great name and in the name of Solomon, our master, commander of the jinns and men, upon him be the salute." Almost before he had finished saying this, there were the animals, and each had set before him the necessary food, that which he liked best. Then he rubbed the ring, and the spirit of the ring again answered him like a rushing in the ears. "Command me, and whatever you desire shall be done, save only that which is not to be done, master of the ring." "Tell me, in the name of Solomon, peace upon him, is this the end? For I must look after the welfare of these companions of mine until the end, according to the command of my own master, the Khoja Ansar of Herat." "No," replied the spirit, "it is not the end." Saif-ul-Muluk stayed at this spot, where he had the jinn build him a small house and a place for the animals, and he passed his days with them. Every day the jinn brought them all sufficient for their needs, and passers-by marveled at the sanctity of Saif Baba, Father Saif as he was called, who lived on nothing, surrounded by tame and wild animals. When he was not studying the notes of his travels and contemplating his experiences, Saif Baba observed the three animals and learnt their ways. Each responded to him in its own way. He encouraged their good qualities and discouraged their bad ones, and he often spoke to them about the great Khoja Ansar and the 3 pieces of advice. From time to time holy men passed by his habitation, and often they invited him to dispute with them, or to learn their own particular ways. But he refused, saying, "I have my task to perform, given me by my teacher." Then one day he was surprised to find that the cat was speaking to him in a language which he understood. "Master," said the cat, "you have your task, and you must carry it out. But are you not surprised that the time which you call the end has not come?" "I am not really surprised," said Saif Baba, "because for all I know it might last for 100 years. "That is where you are wrong," said the bird, which was now talking too, "for you have not learnt what you could have learnt from the various travellers who have passed this way. You do not realize that although they appear different, as we animals all appear different to you, they were all sent by the source of your teaching, by Khoja Ansar himself, to see whether you had acquired enough insight to follow them." "If this is true," said Saif Baba, "which I do not for a moment believe, can you explain to me why it is that a mere cat and a tiny sparrow can tell me things which I, with the miraculous benefits which I have received, cannot see?" "That is simple," they both said together. "It is that you have become so accustomed to looking at things in only one way, that your shortcomings are visible even to the most ordinary mind." This worried Saif Baba. "So I could have found the door of the 3rd piece of advice long ago if I had been properly attuned to it?" he asked. "Yes," said the dog, joining the discussion. "The door has opened 12 times in the past years, but you did not see it. We did, but because we are animals, we could not tell you." "Then how can you tell me now?" "You can understand our speech because you yourself have lately become more human. But you have only one more chance, for age is overcoming you." Saif Baba at first thought, "This is a hallucination." Then he thought, "They have no right to talk to me like this. I am their master and the source of their sustenance." Then another part of him thought, "If they are wrong, it does not matter, but if they are right, this is terrible for me. I cannot take a chance." So he awaited his opportunity. Months passed. One day a wandering dervish came along and pitched a tent on Saif Baba's doorstep. He made friends with the animals, and Saif decided to take him into his confidence. "Away with you," snapped the dervish. "I am not interested in your tales of the Master Ansari, your clouds and your seeking and your responsibility to animals, even your magic ring. Leave me in peace. I know what you should be talking about, but I do not know what you are talking about." Saif Baba in desperation called the spirit of the ring, but the jinn merely said, "I am not to tell you those things which are not to be told, but I do know that you are suffering from the disease called permanent hidden prejudice, which rules your thoughts and makes it difficult for you to progress in the way." Then Saif Baba went to the dervish who was sitting on his doorstep and said, "What should I do? For I feel a responsibility for my animals and a confusion about myself, and there is no more guidance in my 3 pieces of advice." "You have talked sincerely," said the dervish, "and this is a beginning. Hand your animals over to me, and I will tell you the answer." "But I do not know you, and you ask too much," said Saif Baba. "How can you ask such a thing? I respect you, but there is still a doubt in my mind." "Well spoken," said the dervish. "You have revealed not your concern for your animals, but your own lack of perception about me. If you judge me by emotion or logic, you cannot benefit from me. You are still covetous in some way, maintaining proprietorship over your animals. Go away, as sure as my name is Darwaza." Now, Darwaza means door, and Saif Baba thought very hard about this. Could this be the door which was foretold by his Sheikh Ansari? "You may be the door I am seeking, but I am not sure," he said to the dervish Darwaza. "Be off with you, you and your speculations," shouted the dervish. "Don't you see that the first 2 pieces of advice were for your mind, and that the last piece can only be understood when you perceive it yourself?" After nearly 2 more years of confusion and anxiety, Saif Baba suddenly realized the truth. He called his animals and dismissed them, saying, "You are on your own now. This is the end." As he said so, he realized that the animals now had human forms, and that they were transformed. Standing beside him was Darwaza, but his form was now that of the great Khoja Ansar himself. Without saying a word, Ansari opened a door in the tree beside the stream, and as he walked over the threshold, Saif Baba saw written up in letters of gold in a wondrous cavern the answers to the questions about life and death, about mortality and humanity, about knowledge and ignorance, which had plagued him all his life. "Attachment to externals," said the voice of Ansari, "has been what has held you back all these years. In some ways, because of this, you are too late. Take here the only part of wisdom still open to you." This podcast is copyright 2018, the Idries Shah Foundation.